So UnholyCanoe here, playing tank on Dorado. Skip ahead a little bit. So this is not a replay code, so I can't just fly around the map, unfortunately. But at least we do get comms from his POV. Forward a bit. So let's take a look at our team comp real quick. We got Sigma, obviously, versus Hog Ryan. I'd love for him to press tab and be able to see opposing team comp right now and have a good idea of what we're running up against. We know Widow, obviously we know the tanks, we see the Soldier.
Orisa, if you want to drop now.
So we got Orisa Sig, standard-ish spam, Ashe. I think I saw a McCree, so double hit scan. Not a ton of shield damage or anything like that, but we'll be able to burn down Ryan's shield fairly easily with the double shield from Orisa Sigma. Using this high ground, obviously very advantageous for that. Using the long sight lines, forcing enemy to walk through it. Even burns resources like Lamp, just based on the amount of damage coming through. So good to hold this high ground. Dorado in general, in ranked, every single team is going to be starting up here, spamming down, rotating back to main, right? Unless they find a big advantage and find an opportunity to drop. It sounds like that's what Canoe is calling for here. So let's see if they're able to turn this cooldown usage, because it's basically an ultimate ability that BAP just threw out, and probably didn't need to. They were probably able to just heal up the spam damage. Let's see if they can turn that into an advantage.
Oh, I can stay back here and I can damage from this side.
The lamp goes down a bit slow to try and capitalize. So this is a bit of a danger. It's not really on Canoe to make this call, but he can make the call as one of the tanks. Typically it's your main tank calling for this kind of either rotation or for an engage. As tanks, you are the ones setting the tempo for the fight more often than not. It's your decision making, it's your positioning, it's your cooldown usage that will determine where the rest of your team can play. So seeing that they burnt Lamp, and they're still relatively in the open here, trying to take space through this choke point, I would like to see an aggressive move from the front line of Canoe's team here, either looking to find like an aggressive pull and drop into rock combo or something like that. Swoop,
Yes,
thank you
sir.
for the subscription. Yes, sir. All right, good to know text-to-speech works. 2 months up. Welcome back. So, from what I'm seeing so far, relatively passive play. Basically just looking to get as much damage in, not really looking to start a fight. As the off-tank here, you could be looking for more aggressive options. Dropping as a solo, as a solo call is not the right play, but you could be looking to make a team play to call the drop and collapse on them. If you as tanks, for example, drop on top of them, and while your backline still has control of the high ground, those are some free angles that will likely be uncontested since they're dealing with you on point. But instead, we're opting just for some more spam. And now we're dropping. So let's go back a bit. Two things about this drop. One, I think it's too late to try and make this play because the timing from this recontest is really awkward. Orisa's kind of stuck behind this corner now. She's not like front contesting the payload. So if you drop here as Sigma, Orisa is still stuck around the corner. Here, let's use some more visible colors. Orisa's stuck around this corner here. So her area of influence is like on the cart. By dropping here, you can obviously get a ton of damage in their backline and force them to react to that split threat, but also you have no support from the rest of your team unless you expect your backline to stay on the high ground, which might not be possible given the open sightlines and there's no more shields on the high ground, and there's no like active threat from your team on the point. This is very passive positioning from your Orisa, and by trying to react to your Orisa's positioning with an aggressive movement of your own as the off tank here is pretty risky. So looking at this drop, for example, if they were to just ignore Orisa, maybe leave Ryan to match Orisa and the rest of the team turns on you, they have a Hog especially who's very good at turning and punishing people that are a bit too forward. This positioning is very easily punished.
They only have Baptiste for heals right now?
Luckily, you seem to have caught them off guard. They were too focused on the Orisa. This is a very good opportunity to try and push forward now that you got this kill on BAP. Now that you can see the enemy teams like using their defensive cooldowns, the Hog just vaped. They're trying to stay alive. They're trying to stabilize instead of trying to turn on you. this is a good opportunity to go aggressive, to regroup with your team, stabilize, and then find aggressive targets together. So a bit of a risky move to find that angle, but it pays off because the enemy team wasn't paying attention. Unfortunately, your Orisa goes down. Let's take a look at how Orisa died exactly. Sounds like the Widow is flanking. So yeah, by the time you're able to catch up with your team and turning around to get that kill on Hog just took even more time. By the time that our Sigma's here regrouping with the team, you can see how the tanks aren't really covering for each other. When Sigma dropped, there was nothing Orisa could do to cover that aggression, even though it went unpunished. But then by the time Sigma's there catching up to where Orisa was, that level of disconnect from the two tanks meant that one of them went down. The flank from enemy Widow, obviously not easy to deal with as these slow tanks, but potentially could have been blocked if you were more ready to be with your Orisa. Typically when you want to see sort of flank pressure from your Sig is on like shorter angles. So for example, let's wait for a good POV. So for example, if your Orisa was stuck here, if you instead opted to stay on the high ground because you're one, safer positioning, but also it's a shorter distance to regroup with your Orisa, or if you played more defensively and your Orisa's here and you do like a short flank like over here by the stalls where you're not together, so you can still influence more space and deny more space with your shields, but you can still easily cover for each other. This is a similar concept that you'll see from support duos, where you want each support to be able to work independently, but when needed to, they can cover for each other. Same goes for tanks.
Fuck you, Tickety.
Thank you for the follow, a ham sandwich.
Behind us?
The split positioning from the enemy here allowed your team to reposition here. So let's see how aggressive we can take this space. Good coverage for the high noon play. Kind of a bit disconnected from your front line. Again, opening yourselves up to Widow. I'm not sure what. I'm not seeing a lot of coordination with the Orisa. Orisa's kind of just standing on cart, which can be fine, and you're doing a good job of leveraging the fact that the enemy team wants to push the payload by getting around on high ground, using flanks, finding good angles like that. Good acknowledgement of the Widow. Ideally, in situations like this where you know the split threat from the Widow is a problem, you'd be able to either do one of two things. Either set up in positions that completely nullify her, usually in defensive positions where you as Sigma can just throw a shield at her, or you call for these aggressive movements and you also call to your team that you know Widow's going to be flanking behind, and to eliminate that threat, if you push far enough forward, potentially around the corner, knowing that it's going to be a 5v6 because Widow's setting up this flank, you can just capitalize on the fact that she's busy in rotation and nullify your sightlines by fighting in a different space, anticipating that movement.
She's getting ready to hook back up soon.
I think this is a bit of an overcommitment trying to deny Widow. If you were like Winston or Diva or something, or like a more mobile tank, you've kind of just given up all this pressure main because you're worried about when Widow's going to peak instead of just reacting to when she peaks. It's good to, of course, know that she's going to be there, know she's on the flank, and be ready to deal with that threat. But until that threat's realized, until that Widow actually grapples up and peaks, for example, you're just wasting your time, and your front line's losing a lot of pressure because your Sigma shield's not there to enable more space for your DPS, and the damage and the threat of your rock aren't there to deny enemy tanks just from walking up like this.
Oh my god.
They, of course, pair ults, which is even more pressure, which would have been hard to deal with even if you were in the front line. But you would have given your team a better shot of repelling this, just denying the space in the first place. The flank on the high ground, like we saw with the high noon play, would have been a good way of slowing down this push, but also being able to throw in free damage and punish them if they go over aggressive. But because we were focused on the Widow for too long, the front line just gets rolled over.
Soldier, I might have been able to actually do something.
Skip ahead a bit. So we're swapping to Hammond here. Let me see when he hits tab. So team comp: Hog, Rhine, Soldier, Widow, Anabaptiste. Relatively squishy backline with these DPS and these supports. Hog, obviously a very independent threat. It's a good threat to ball, but definitely avoidable if you're playing the ball. The ball pick, I'm assuming here, was because you want to be able to deal with the Widow. It seems like Widow's opening up a lot of space for their team. And you don't feel like you're getting enough value on the Sigma, and potentially because this second point on Dorado is a lot harder to hold the high grounds for a long time.
Actually, no, I'm just gonna go my feed.
What I don't like is how you're throwing away 95% ult. I can understand the pick like on paper. Hey, thank you for the follow. I understand the swap on paper in order to be able to deal and able to have the most individual impact. That makes sense. It makes sense in wanting to do that in ranked, obviously. But throwing away this amount of ult economy, especially with the ult that can be as impactful as Sigma, there's very stationary targets. Both supports and both tanks are very abusable with Sigma ult. I would have liked to see you try and stabilize, deny the snowball for second point Dorado, and then if you have time, prioritizing the swap to ball. I think the ult here is definitely workable. Yes, Widow's a threat, but she can be dealt with in other ways. And this ult is kind of a waste of all that shards you built up in first point.
Call out that Widow if he's here, please.
So he's calling to that he's hunting the Widow. Again, by focusing solely on the Widow, similar to if you were on Sigma, obviously Sigma is less of a threat to Widow, but you were trying to do the same thing at the end of first point there. By solo focusing on the Widow and how you can deny her space and not thinking about what your front line's going through, you run the risk of your front line just losing that duel. Your team comp doesn't have a lot of spam compared to theirs with the Ryan Roadhog. Soldier Widow, obviously not a lot of spam, but just Roadhog alone will probably be enough to force your Orisa back. So you're banking on the fact that either you're going to be able to get on the Widow and then rejoin the fight and have more of an impact that way, versus they're going to be able to push your Orisa back and clear out the entire map for the rest of their team. So unless you work really fast on ball here, I don't think this swap's going to pay off. Although they overextend themselves, it looks like, and get caught off by the Coalescence.
Oh, I got stepped. Found the Widow, she's back left.
So I'm not going to talk too much about just raw mechanics here. Ball, probably one of the most mechanically demanding heroes in the game, but you didn't really do much other than exist here. The rest of your team was kind of carrying you through this fight with their ultimates. That early pick on the BAP. So other than this small boop here that you got,
Found the Widow, she's back left.
and then you got slept, you want to think of Ball as a character that plays very similarly to a flanker, like a tracer or something, where you're weaving in and out of the fight, not necessarily planting yourself in the middle of a fight as a tank and just trying to take aggro. You don't want aggro on you because you are very punishable, as we saw, like the sleep. They should have been able to capitalize on that if they had more numbers, if their DPS maybe didn't lose these duels, for example. If you're going to open up these fights as Ball, either one, you're getting on a priority target like the Widow or the Ana if they're split off and you can punish them or something like that, or you're disrupting the enemy team as often as possible, not necessarily for as long as possible. It's not like you're primaling in as Winston and you're taking a lot of time. You're opening up a lot of space that way. You're just one wrecking ball. Every time you boop in is another stagger in their momentum. So you want to do that as often as possible, not all in the first go around every single time. So as soon as you see that amount of threat on you, the threat of being slept by Ana, for example, the moment you lost your momentum on the cart, a stronger team would have burned you down, especially a team with a hog. So you need to be really wary of that at playing Ball here.
Nice fix.
Your DPS are kind of just stomping on them.
Soldier's going around for a flank. Soldier going around back.
Your DPS are doing a good job of controlling the high ground. It's possible the threat of you on Ball is denying a lot of space, but I haven't seen a lot of active threat from you.
No sleep. No. He might be rotating up top right now. He was just bottom.
All right, let's see.
Where was she? Where is she?
We're looking for the Widow. I think you just drove over her. Yeah. I'm guessing you didn't see this. This is a very easy target to focus down. She's isolated from her team. You can roll off the edge. and slam back down to get this Widow up in the air. It's very hard for Widow to land a good grapple while she's doing that, and it's also very easy for you to chase down grapples. She'll likely be forced to go on top of this, on top of the door here, and then you can just swing back around. So awareness is a big thing here. I think you're tunneled on looking at where Ryan is, maybe looking at where the point is, thinking you're going to need to be rolling your way through, but from your communication and from what I've seen so far, if you're hunting the Widow, there's no excuse to be missing this here. Another thing about playing ball, just a small mechanics thing. If there's anything that can threaten you, Hog getting a pull, I'm so blind. It happens. Just keep in mind what your targets are. Keep in mind, if you're hunting a Widow, think of the common Widow spots. Even though you don't see her here, you should be thinking like, this is a common Widow spot, in church is a common Widow spot. Instead, you're kind of just rolling through main and hoping to catch her or someone else off guard. If you instead anticipate the enemy movements, anticipate where Widow's going to want to grapple to and set up to, usually top church in this case, or anticipate where the Ana is going to be playing based on where the fight's evolving on payload, stuff like that, you'll be able to take smarter pathing, you'll be able to go more unnoticed because you're not just running it down main, and it'll be harder to punish you with stuff like hooks. But what I was about to say is this slam, typically, I'm not going to say this applies to like every rank, but if you're just planning on outplaying this Hog, this could be fine. If you're not worried about getting hooked because you're not threatened by Hog's ability to burst you down, or you're not threatened by Ana's ability to sleep you, that might be the case at certain ranks, I'm not sure. But when you're approaching higher levels of play, you need to anticipate these people landing these abilities, anticipate them landing the sleep, potential flashbangs from McCree, stuns from Brig, hooks from Hog. All those things need to be taken into consideration, and it's a lot of the reason why you don't see high-level wall players slamming very often, unless they're making a big coordinated push with their team, like in a dive, and they're setting up other members. Most ball players will set up just to boop through people, disrupt them, mess up their positioning, force backline members forward, force frontline members backwards, whatever the case, so that your team can capitalize on those short windows, rather than trying to get a big slam, follow up right away for a long time, as if you're a Winston or something. This is Canoe, yes. So this hook, very easy for this Hog to react to this. You stall yourself in midair for like half a second, and then you come down. He can react to either you being stalled in midair or you hitting the ground, because it's a very predictable location. Same with Ana Sleep Dart. Would have rather seen you, one, take more creative pathing to look for the Widow to hunt her down, but also not commit to that slam when you see those active threats in front of you.
Oh, he's 1-2. That's unfortunate.
Not bad tracking, trying to bring that soldier down, but by the time you were ready to be an influence in that fight, it was too late. They were walking up too much. You didn't disrupt their movement coming in. You didn't isolate down their Widow, so you got free positioning and forced your team back that way. It's very hard for your team to follow up when they're on the back foot and you're playing ball, rather than you being aggressive and opening up the most fights as possible. A little underestimate or overestimating the range on your grapple hook there. So again, let's look at how you get to this Widow. So one, if you're trying to close the distance as fast as possible, you can just use this. Unless you're going for like a big swing, you don't need to aim this high. You can even aim at this and just roll forward. I think if you like were really tricky, you can technically like latch onto ledges if you aim it right. But yeah, just use whatever's available to you. I think this is just a symptom of not having enough ball time, not being comfortable enough with the grapple mechanic. Usually you'll see this balls looking for very specific rollouts instead of adapting to the terrain around them when they don't have a ton of experience and aren't as comfortable on the hero. So yeah, just better understanding of how to use the grappling hook, better terrain usage and stuff like that will come over time. But keep reminding yourself that you don't need to go for big, huge rollouts or anything like that. You just need to be able to get to where you want to be on time. Slamming when you don't really have a target is, again, not very good because, one, it kills your momentum, it burns that cooldown, and makes you vulnerable. You want to keep up that momentum, that fireball, as often as you can so that you can open up an assassination by booping, potential slamming if they're in the right position, and then following up with your guns. For the same reason we swapped to ball on second point to hunt down the Widow, I think you'll probably be looking to swap onto Sigma here for third point because it's much more narrow. It's much easier to block off flank positions if a Widow is trying to keep Widow on this map. You have really good high ground you can abuse. Ball rollouts are not impossible here by any means, but they're not as easy because the point's not as open as second point. But I hope you keep your minds this time. Even though it's not like a big game-changing ult, not as powerful individually as Sigma's ult, it's still a very strong utility. Being able to deny space just on cart or wherever the team wants to fight, if they're walking forward or trying to kite back and you can cut that off, can be very strong.
Let's go for regroup.
So during a full regroup here, you as Ball, you're the most mobile member on your team. And you have like a lot of good scouting opportunities. Whose VOD are we reviewing? This is UnholyCanoe playing Offtank / playing Sigma and Hammond so far. Yeah. So as Ball, I'd like to see you take a bit more priority taking space here and scouting for your team. It's good for you to call them to like play slow, but you don't need to play as safely. Being that you're a tank, you should be able to scout out the Widow like you're doing, but you could have done this sooner. Scout out the Widow, scout out the Hog, scout out the most immediate threats to your team so that you can dictate how they retake the point and are aware of the threats walking forward. You can't play the game for them, but you can give them as much information as possible to help them out. All right, let's see this execute. Oh, unlucky. So you did the combo really well. It's just we didn't get that tracking. Another thing that's pretty hard for learning Ball is tracking above you, because when you slam and tracking down those targets can be a pain. Let's see if you could have done anything to make this easier for yourself. It's a little bit unfortunate you don't quite hit this boop. If you were to hit this boop, it would have just killed her. It would have been enough because with the slam. Can you see her HP here? I can't tell if you're moving while you're shooting here, but even if you were just standing still here and just focusing purely on your tracking, you might be able to burn that target down before the nade comes in. So yeah, I'm not going to blame you too much for that one. I know tracking, specifically when you're aiming up, can be really difficult, but it's something you'll need to practice if you're going to play a lot of Ball. So let's look at the movement after that too. So you kind of don't really know where you want to go after this. You're not being threatened by anything. It's just the Widow. You could and potentially the Ana looking at you too. You don't see a Hog. There's no immediate threats here. I'm not sure why you abandoned this route to get back to your team and instead opt to take yourself completely out of the fight here. Like I said before, you want to maintain as much uptime as possible and find as many openings as possible. Not necessarily big long engage windows, but rapid fire short ones. So engage after engage after engage. You want to be taking tempo away from the enemy team and opening up possibilities for your team as often as possible with the Ball. So by taking yourself completely out of the fight here, maybe you felt more threatened than you actually were. I'm not sure. I think it was literally just Widow and then Ana was coming back main. You call the Widow up top. Did you actually see her? Or did you just assume? I'm not even sure where the Widow is right now.
Ryan's one.
So another thing you never want to be doing is Ball. For the same reason I mentioned after right here. Is you don't want to be caught in the front line. You don't want to be dueling tanks basically ever, unless you're like focusing down staggered kills or anything like that at the end of a fight. You want to be disrupting them, maybe booping around the tanks, but never really the one in their face like this. There's no need for it. When you're forced to shoot shield like this, it's just time you could be using to set up for the next roll through. Got the game sense of a bean, but we love him. So, two major points. Number one, the swap from the Sigma from first point to second point. I understand it on paper, but losing that counter snowball potential with the Sig ult can be very detrimental for your team. And two, your Hammond play in general. I think you just need more time on it. This was so long ago, I can't even honestly say. I probably thought I heard her grapple away, or I thought she grappled to that ledge looking to her spawn. So at the time it was up top. Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough to assume that she was going for that angle. But yeah, you should still be focused on the targets that you can actually get on by setting up your rollouts instead of focusing too much on where the enemy front line is, focusing more on where you can find your opportunities as often as possible. Nikki, hello, how's it going? So now we are on Ryan's area. What are we playing? Oh, hit tab, please. This is the one thing I don't like about not having replay viewers, not being able to see the full comp. Okay, so we're on Ryan's area versus Ryan Hog again. So, overall, past first point, or I guess third point's not bad, but the second point, Dorado, is kind of weak for Zarya. But if you can use space properly on first point here, you get find ways to get good bubble usage, and get some good charge before the fight breaks out via spam damage or something. So speaking of which, let's take a look at this shift. Kind of an optimistic bubble usage for yourself there. Typically, they're going to be shooting at the enemy, your Reinhardt, more than you, because they want to be able to break the shield. That's a reliable thing they can focus down. And they know that you have bubble, and it's very easy for them to just stop shooting. Typically, if you want to react to things like the enemy soldier's Helix rocket, the Fire Strike, Hog's right click potentially, stuff like that, and react to that as aggressively as possible to build yourself ult charge instead of relying on them to shoot you.
They're gonna meet us up front.
So we're only at 10%, looks like, charge here. And this is the spot you don't want to be in, is Zarya. So this is the reason Zarya's a bit weak on Dorado here, first point. After this choke, she can be better, and on second point, she's kind of weak too. But if you're not able to get good charge and be an active threat right now, it's very easy for them to just stop the payload. You can't take any angles to be a threat yourself. You're basically forced to shoot through the shield. And it's very hard, unless you coordinate really good timing with your Rhine, to get space away from the enemy team here. McCree going down doesn't help, but we get to trade with the lamp at least. Okay, let's look at this shift one more time too. When you're using shift as Zarya specifically, loving the analysis and overall understanding of all situations, doing a great job. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Looking at shift usage in general on Zarya, and this is something Zarya players learned a lot from Goat's meta. I'm not sure how much Zarya played during Goat's meta. It was so long ago now. But you want to be a DPS basically. That's where Zarya shines, when she has the capability of being this untouchable, like, ion cannon of damage walking through the enemy team, right? So bubbling your Rhine here is fine. It lets them get some swings off. It's a short window, but it's good for your Rhine. Builds you a tiny bit of charge, but look how early you bubble yourself here. So there's nothing threatening you right now, other than maybe chip damage and maybe this Baptiste turning on you. The enemy Rhine got forced back. You've got a little bit of space to work with, and your Rhine is still in between you and the enemy team. So you have this buffer of either Ryan getting shot himself or his shield taking a lot of damage before you're ever threatened. You can use that fact to your advantage by saving your shift as greedily as possible. This isn't really like an aggressive play you're making. You're just forcing this Baptiste out or to be killed. But you could have saved your shift. You took no damage. You didn't gain any charge here. You could have saved that shift to either react to something turning on you, say even if the Baptiste started shooting on you, which I don't know why he didn't. Or you can react to your Rhine getting forced back, and then you can cover yourself with bubble to also give up a bit of positioning. But now you don't even have that option, which means you don't have it to duel this Hog, which looks like it won't matter anyway. We'll get to that bubble on the Ashe in a second. Luckily, you get a new one before he's able to capitalize it. But again, so your charge right now it's kind of hard to tell from the quality of this video. I'm sorry, but it's in the single digits.
18,000.
Hey, J-Nub, welcome. So let's look at your bubble usage just overall in this fight. So you shift the Rhine. This was fine. They were burning lamp, and now we have an opportunity to go aggressive. So you want your Rhine to be swinging during this window. That's a good bubble. This bubble, like we just talked about, could have been saved. No real threats on you. You're solo dueling Hog right now. Not really keeping up with the aggression of your team. Typically, for Zarya, like I said, you want to be a DPS. Hope you're having luck finding a new job. We'll see. Like I said, you want to be a DPS, which means you also need to think about what space your Rhine is using and abusing the hell out of that whenever you can. Granted, this is a winning fight, but if the enemy team had any opportunity to turn this, you could shut that down more easily by playing with your team. So look at this next E. No real active threats. Now you lose the ability to react to a hog hook. If they hook the Ash, for example, after your bubble, you lose the ability to bubble someone who's actively in danger. For example, if someone turned to come duel the hog with you and ran in front of you, you could then bubble them. Or if your Rhine was getting pressured by someone else in this fight, like the soldier that we just saw, you just saw someone in front of you, you saw that your cooldown was coming up, and you pressed E. Do you prefer reviewing a win or a loss? I prefer... It's hard to like make a blanket statement, but in general, losses are matches where people have the most to learn from because it's where they're confused why they lost most of the time, or confused about what they could have done more to turn that into a win. Either way, I prefer games that just aren't completely one-sided stomps. Games that show how much individual impact could have changed the outcome of the game. So, yeah. Wins are fine, losses are fine, but not fast 2-minute games, either way.
Behind on card. Anna, can you nade him?
And then your shift here, I think is fine. But again, you were as a Zarya with full HP, you could wait till he starts shooting you, time the rhythm of his shots. What about ties? That would be like the ideal game, right? Because it's not one-sided either way. It's obviously the perfect game to review. It's too late to submit VODs. Yeah, there's a link underneath my stream titled VODs. If you just click on that, it'll take you to a Google form. Just link me either your replay code or a YouTube link, and I will go through it. Can't promise I'll go through it today, but I'll be doing this more in the future as well.
Thank you.
So,
Only took 18
I'm not going to say you would have killed that hog sooner or you would have saved any teammates because obviously no one died, but you could have put yourself at a charge here, which is one of your side quests as a Zarya. You should be always thinking about how you can get more charge. And again, wasted bubble here, there's no active threat, you're not reacting to anything. You have the cooldown, so you press it. So I'd like to see more discipline around that cooldown. E specifically is like the only way you can help your team as Zarya, otherwise you're just a full-on DPS. God damn, 7-8.
That's fucking shit. Use my bubble. Get this right here.
That's a good bubble, because again, you're in their face, you're reacting to them forced to walk through you, and you're an active threat to them, so the bubble on yourself there was really good.
Destroy lamp gone. Soldier top left.
Would have liked to see... Where did this bubble go? I didn't even see. It's a bit choppy, so it's hard to see exactly what happened here.
Destroy lamp gone. Soldier top left.
So imagine... This is not just you, by the way. This retake needs to be stifled as a team effort. It needs to be stopped as a team effort. But imagine a world where instead of bubbling here, you have bubble for your Reinhardt to go aggressive and swing at this choke. Instead of having to bubble yourself and stand in their face, your Reinhardt's there with you. You're calling that you can bubble him. And then you can follow up off the space your Rhine is making instead of having to find your own space in this mid fight. Because again, you need to think of yourself as more of a DPS than a tank in some of these cases. So now you don't have bubble to, well, at the time that Rhine's trying to push in because we wasted bubble on our DPS. We don't have our self bubble anymore because we used it to be aggressive to buy yourself some time. This means it's going to be harder for you to get back into the fight, like this sort of ebb and flow. But you don't have that one extra tool to get yourself even in a more aggressive position. So you're forced to give a little bit of space. You get desync from your Rhine. You get shattered. Again.
Why am I stuck on a fucking... Oh my god, dude, I guess I got a fucking scooter.
Kind of unlucky. Not sure you're going to get out no matter where you went there, honestly, but unlucky you got stuck on the bike. Big sad.
Also, I should go hog, but I must have grabbed, so there's no point right now.
Good. We learned from last round. We're keeping our ult charge. Again, would like to see you reacting to damage instead of just hoping they're going to shoot the bubble. The level of play of this game has gone up so much since launch, but like even in like lower ranks like gold and plat now compared to like GM, it used to be that like everyone would just pump damage all the time into bubbles. But now, even at like gold, plat, maybe even silver, I don't know, people are trained enough. They understand the hero enough now that they won't shoot your bubble. And if you're this optimistic with your bubble usage, you're missing out on a lot of potential charge. What rank is this? This is high plat, I think. I'm pretty sure you were near diamond when I saw the beginning. Thank you for the follow, Toxic Blade.
Ryan shield, pummel that Ryan shield, pummel that Ryan shield.
So again, you've used both your bubbles. You're gearing up for a fight here. You're at 0 charge. Now you're down your bubbles. You can't time them exactly when you want to. You might be forced to react with them as they're coming up, which is not how you want to be playing. And you can't play as aggressively yourself because you don't have the coverage of your self bubble to enable that.
Soldier half, soldier half, soldier half. Destroy lamp, destroy
Thanks,
lamp.
man.
Lamp down, lamp
I
down.
need a haircut pretty badly, honestly.
Soldier down, soldier dead.
So the alts went out. Let's rewatch that real
Soldier
quick.
half, soldier, pummel that Ryan shield.
So even though you wasted the early bubbles, you stall out aggression long enough that your new bubble comes up and you enable your run to charge in. This allows you to catch the soldier off guard, which is good because even though you don't have self bubble, this soldier being extended means it's easy to punish without getting punished yourself. Good focus on the lamp, of course. Now that you have self bubble, good. You reacted to the attack visor that time instead of just using it immediately. Making sure you were able to finish that kill.
Use Carter's cover, get the hamster.
Overall, keeping up with your main tank as well, much better. Like I said, think of yourself as a DPS here. Use the space your tank is finding. I'll review any rank. I will probably,
Nice.
at the higher ranks, I'll probably have the feedback will look different and be more like conceptual rather than the directed to the individual. But yeah, I'm happy to review anything.
I got 2 grabs. Ryan, next.
Not sure if you needed this grab. So let's look at the kill feed real quick. So we just killed hamster. A reminder, they're going to be spawning a 3rd point now because we just capped first. We just killed 2. They are down 1 DPS and 1 tank. And there's 3 people here. And you find a grab on the McCree and the Moira. This will guarantee the kill on the McCree. But based on the positioning these people are in, your Rhine is matching their Rhine right now. These people are isolated. You're at medium charge, say about 50. Yeah, if you click the link below, it says VODs. It'll take you to a Google form where you can send either YouTube links or replay codes that I'll look over. No promise I'll go over them today, depending on how long this takes, but in the future I'll be doing more of these streams. So this grab is good to finish these kills, but I don't think you're in a position where you couldn't have just finished these kills anyway. McCree is a very immobile hero. Their Rhine's not able to cover the McCree. You could just beam them down right now.
I got 2 grabs. Ryan, next.
Ryan pins out the McCree. Enemy Ryan gets nanoed. Yeah, your team probably could have followed that up and gotten the same kills without that grab.
Boss high ground, probably getting ready to drop.
Imagine if you had grab now. Now that the fight's sort of stabilized, they have spawners coming back, but you're still at somewhat of an advantage. Then you could be pushing really aggressively, looking for that grab, and enabling an even bigger snowball.
Kill the ball.
Again, wasted bubble that we're seeing. I don't want to go too in depth. I feel like I've talked about bubbles a lot already. I think you get the idea though, where you don't want to just be using it on cooldown.
Really low up top here.
You want to be reacting to aggression from the enemy team and enabling aggression for yourself.
She's got fade. Soldier up top behind us, high ground.
This is a bit of an awkward spot to be in. So, yes, snowballing is good. Finding aggressive plays is good. But it gets to a point in the map where... what am I trying to say? It gets to a point in the map where spawns end up flipping away from your favor as the attackers here and into defender's favor. Unless you're taking time, unless you have members in front of you that are easily punished, I would say these people here are not easily punished given by the fact that they have ample healing. They've got a full shield in front of their face. You'd be having to push around not only the corners, you have to push around those corners, but you have to push through this choke in their main, which means you're going to be getting no support from your team. You're effectively turning this into a 2vx. We don't even know exactly how many members are coming from spawn still are able to support this. So unless you see like an immediately, you see an opportunity immediately available to you, pushing this aggressively for so long can be really dangerous. And this is how you lose your snowball, by being too aggressive. You've opened yourself up to this soldier that we didn't scout out and we didn't take the time to deny high ground from. We get pinned. Yeah, so The initial aggression on that group of 3 up to like under the bridge, I think was really good. But I think pushing past that, especially specifically around the corner where your backline could no longer fully support you, your Ana, I believe, was on cart, was really dangerous. And given, unless you had like a grab at that time and you could like burn people down with just you and Ryan, it's a really risky situation to put yourself in.
Exactly how you play that scenario every single time. Either one person on cart, 5 people push forward.
Yeah, this replay VOD's a bit blurry. It's just, I think, the bit rate of the recording. But we can still make out most of it.
Let's Ryan probably shatter. Ryan probably shatter. Ryan purple. Ryan purple still. Ryan down. Nice.
Good aggression. Good keeping up with your Reinhardt. You guys are using a lot of ults. I mean, that's fine. You did a good job, or your team did a good job of capitalizing on the space you and Ryan were making. Even though you were just with Ryan and were mainly only punishing frontline there, the aggression from your ults allowed your DPS to clear out high ground and fully clear out the space. Ryan swinging on Ryan. How did that soldier die? Oh, he's trying to go real aggressive, and he gets caught out. So that's another symptom of trying to go too aggressive in between fights, where like if you don't know where the enemy is and you're not taking time to clear them out. He had OBS plugged into a potato. It's unlucky. So another situation where, not necessarily you, I think it was good of you to try and punish this Ryan and force him back. But if your backline at the same time isn't capitalizing on the space, if, for example, they're getting picked while they're trying to set up flanks, you need to react to that by playing defensively and trying to find a way back into the fight, because you should be expecting that level of aggression. Not much to do once those ults come out and you get forced completely back. But I think you and Ryan, specifically, could be looking to snowball by controlling the map instead of just pushing forward at all times. Like I said, Zarya kind of falls off on second point here because of the high grounds and the ranges that she needs to play. But you can circumvent that by, once you do get control, once you do get an advantage in the fight, you take as much space away from the enemy team so that if they want to leverage high ground against you, they have to walk through you to do it. Trying to react to a bit of chip damage there, but again, it's very easy to just let go of mouse 1.
Get the ball.
So,
Sort of behind Visory.
bit of an awkward engage from their ball.
Soldier can die.
Surprised Moira ends up dying to that. That was a very telegraphed play.
Push forward with me.
You guys are even and you have a grav. Let's see how we find this grav.
Wait, more than just Ryan and the Moira here.
Oh my god, the compression.
Top right, McCree and Anna top right.
So,
Ryan, low, healer, Reinhardt, please.
Another situation where all of our focus is forward on the payload on this ground fight, and this is exactly what the enemy team want. They want all their attention to be on their Ryan. Even though like he's low shield, he's full HP, he's not really in danger, and he's denying payload. Meanwhile, these two members are completely untouched on the high ground. They're Moira's with Ryan, but she's got fade still. She can't really be punished. So how do we look to fight this? If you're the Zarya, you can do, in my opinion, one of two things.
Right. Wait, more than just.
You could hope for the best from your backline to be able to follow this up, but you could try grabbing these members on high ground once they group up.
There's a McCree top right, McCree and Anna top right.
Even just solo killing the Ana, making it easier for your backline, but potentially catching the Ana, McCree, or Soldier together is an option for you. It's how you can reach faraway members as Zarya and have an influence over that duel to make it more favorable for your backline, because grabbing the Ryan here, like you said, is not something you want to do. The other option would be to try and grab this Ryan right here as he's separated from his backline. You don't really know, other than the Soldier that we saw on our side of Church, attack visoring our backline, you don't really know what kind of support he has here or where his backline is until right now, where you can see them. But if you were to grab him at this corner, you'd be able to capitalize on him, meaning they wouldn't have the tools to contest payload. Meaning, yes, they'd still be threatening you from the high ground, but they'd need to make a decision in order to touch the payload, because that's something they can't deal with from the high ground. They can't stop the payload from capping. But instead, we're opting to just put everything into forcing this Reinhardt back. We're not enabling our backline to find the trades with the enemy DPS and supports on the high ground. We're not doing anything to enable that aggression on them. McCree looks like he gets picked. Either he was trying to go aggressive. We grab the Ryan, but again, Ryan is who they want us to be focusing. What's capping? Like capturing the point here. So when the payload hits this, it'll cap second point and then changes its buttons, get some more time bank, and enable third point. So yeah, we can't ignore the high ground for this long. I'm expecting a swap. Okay, yeah. We acknowledge that the high ground's a problem, and we acknowledge we can't do that with Zarya, and we acknowledge that we're likely not going to get much done as Zarya with 20 seconds left on the clock. She's more of a ramp-up hero than an instant impact hero. So this is good. I like the swap a lot. Ideally, your team plays a little safer during this transition, but going in one by one is definitely a symptom of ranks around here. Interesting position from the Honest. She must have heard you coming. I'm not saying you should have predicted this, but it's technically possible for you to scout this out by coming around corners and using the third-person POV camera. I think the only reason Anna was doing this is because she didn't want you to touch, seeing where the time bank was. She knew you would be forced to touch and just wanted to completely shut that down. So, I mean, I'm not going to fault you for the whole map for that last point. Extreme Fall Guys challenge. So, overall, let's talk about each of the heroes we played. We played Sigma, we played Ball, and we played Zarya. The Sigma, overall not bad. I'd be careful about getting too disconnected from your main tank, unless you're making an active play with like other members of your team, like if you're flank high nooning, putting up a shield for McCree or something, or flank Baptiste window, and you put shield up for that to enable like really high pressure aggression. Splitting from your main tank like that runs the risk of you not finding enough value before your front line gets run over. That's the biggest thing. That, and don't swap with 95% all charge. That's the other thing. Number 2, Ball. I think you just need more time on Ball, practicing mechanics, getting used to playing Ball on every available map, learning to be more creative with the way you roll out, being more practice in your tracking, specifically like when you get close quarters targets, you need to be able to finish them as Ball, because there's going to be a lot of situations where you put yourselves in 1v1s with enemy DPS, with enemy supports, and if you can't finish that kill, you're ultimately just wasting time. And Zarya. Bubble usage, you need a lot more discipline, specifically with your E, but also with your self bubble, in order to give yourself as much charge as possible so that you can be as much of an independent threat as possible, as well as keeping yourself aggressive for as long as possible. You want to play as like a DPS, but you have these tank cooldowns where you can give yourself immortality for 2 seconds, right? So if you want to be aggressive and on a flank, make sure you're using your shift appropriately, you're not wasting it, and you're not going aggressive without it. So that's my summary for that one.